The crystal wine glass trembled in my hand as I watched my husband of 12 years lean back in his chair, that familiar smirk playing across his lips. The dining room was bathed in the warm glow of Christmas lights, the turkey growing cold on the table as Luca's family watched with barely concealed anticipation. His mother, Catherine, drummed her manicured fingers against the mahogany table. His brother Isaac shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet my eyes. Even his teenage nephew Tyler had put down his phone to witness whatever spectacle was about to unfold. "Eileen, darling," Luca said, his voice dripping with mock sweetness as he reached into his jacket pocket. "I have a special Christmas gift for you this year." The manila envelope he placed before me looked innocuous enough, but the satisfied gleam in his eyes told a different story. Across the table, his best friend Maverick, who'd been invited to join our family dinner, leaned forward with poorly disguised excitement. "Go ahead, sweetheart," Luca urged, that cruel smile widening. "Open it." My fingers moved mechanically, breaking the seal, pulling out the crisp legal documents that would shatter most women's worlds. Divorce papers. On Christmas Day. In front of his entire family. I could hear Maverick whisper to Isaac, "She'll fall apart," then beg him to stay. "She won't be able to live without him. Women are so unpredictable." Luca chuckled, clearly enjoying every second of my supposed humiliation. "What do you say, Eileen? Ready to sign?" What happened next would haunt them all for the rest of their lives. I reached for the pen with steady hands, signed my name with flourish, and then smiled, really smiled for the first time in months. "Done," I said simply, pushing the papers back across the table. The confusion that flickered across their faces was delicious, but I wasn't finished. "Actually, Luca," I said, rising gracefully from my chair, "I have a Christmas gift for you too." The beautifully wrapped box I retrieved from under the tree was heavy in my hands, tied with a perfect red velvet bow. I placed it gently before him, my heart hammering with anticipation. "Open it," I whispered. When he lifted the lid and saw what was inside, the color drained from his face. Catherine gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Maverick stumbled backward, knocking over his chair. Even cocky teenager Tyler went pale. But that was just the beginning of the nightmare I was about to unleash upon them all. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. 6 months earlier, I was still living the lie. My name is Eileen Montgomery, and for 12 years, I had been the epitome of the perfect corporate wife. At 34, I maintained my figure with religious dedication, my auburn hair was always perfectly styled, and my smile never wavered, not even when it felt like my face might crack from the effort. I lived in our pristine suburban mansion with its manicured lawns and imported marble countertops, hosting dinner parties for Luca's business associates, organizing charity galas, and ensuring that our home was a showcase worthy of his position as senior partner at Blackwood and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Every morning I woke at 5:30 to prepare Luca's breakfast exactly as he liked it. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast with a thin layer of orange marmalade, fresh squeezed orange juice, and coffee so black it could strip paint. I laid out his suits, ensured his shirts were pressed to perfection, and sent him off to work with a kiss on the cheek and words of encouragement. My days were filled with yoga classes, volunteer work at the Children's Hospital, and maintaining the social connections that were so crucial to Luca's career advancement. I was the wife who remembered every important client's birthday, who could discuss wine pairings and stock portfolios with equal ease, who photographed beautifully at company events. From the outside we were golden. Luca, with his sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes, commanding respect in every boardroom he entered. Me, the supportive spouse who made it all look effortless. We were featured in the society pages, invited to exclusive events, whispered about with envy at country club gatherings. But perfection, I learned, is just another word for prison. The cracks had started showing about 2 years ago, though I'd been expertly trained to ignore them. Luca began working later, taking more business trips, showing less interest in the intimate moments we once shared. When I'd try to discuss it, he'd dismiss my concerns with practiced ease. "You're being paranoid, Eileen," he'd say, not even looking up from his phone. "I'm building our future. Everything I do is for us." I wanted to believe him. God, how desperately I wanted to believe him. The night that changed everything happened on a rainy Thursday in September. I'd been battling a migraine all day and decided to surprise Luca by picking him up from the office instead of having him take an Uber home. The security guard at Blackwood and Associates knew me well enough to wave me through to the elevator. The 32nd floor was dimly lit, most of the offices empty. But Luca's corner office glowed with warm light, and through the glass walls I could see him. He wasn't alone. She was bent over his desk, not over paperwork but over him. A stunning brunette I recognized as Sofia Rivera, one of the firm's rising associates. 26 years old, Harvard Law graduate, legs that went on for miles. They were so absorbed in their passionate encounter that neither noticed me standing frozen in the hallway, my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. I watched my husband of 10 years move against her with an urgency and desire I hadn't seen from him in months. I should have stormed in. I should have screamed, thrown things, demanded explanations. Instead, I stood there in complete silence, something cold and calculating settling into my chest where my heart used to be. I backed away slowly, took the elevator down and drove home in a daze. That night when Luca came home smelling like her perfume, I said nothing. When he kissed my forehead and apologized for working so late, I smiled and asked if he was hungry. "You're an angel, Eileen," he said, loosening his tie. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Neither did I. But I was about to find out. Over the next few weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. Gone was the trusting, naive woman who believed her husband's every word. In her place emerged a calculating strategist who would have impressed Machiavelli himself. I started small. I noticed things: how Luca's phone was now permanently face down during dinner, how he'd step outside to take certain calls, how his cologne changed to something more expensive and seductive. The signs that once might have driven me to tears now felt like puzzle pieces I was methodically collecting. My first real breakthrough came when I decided to have lunch at Café Luna, a trendy bistro near Luca's office. I'd been going there for years, knew the staff well enough that they always saved me a good table. I wasn't there to spy, I told myself. I was just treating myself to their famous salmon salad. That's when I saw them. Luca and Sofia sat at a corner table, his hand covering hers. Their foreheads almost touching as they spoke in urgent whispers. The intimacy between them was unmistakable. This wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The way she laughed at something he said, the way his thumb traced circles on her knuckles, the way they looked at each other like they were the only two people in the world. I felt bile rise in my throat, but I forced myself to remain calm. I took out my phone and discreetly snapped several photos. Evidence. The word had become my mantra. Mrs. Montgomery. The cheerful voice of Maria, my usual waitress, nearly made me jump out of my skin. "Your usual table is ready." I pasted on my brightest smile. "Actually, Maria, I think I'll take that small table by the window instead. The lighting is so lovely today." From my new vantage point, I could observe them without being noticed. I watched Luca slip an envelope across the table to Sofia. She opened it and her face lit up with delight. Even from across the restaurant I could see the sparkle of jewelry, expensive jewelry. My jewelry allowance, I realized with cold fury, was being spent on his mistress. They left separately, Sofia first, then Luca 10 minutes later. But not before he'd left cash on the table. More than enough to cover their meal and a generous tip. Always the gentleman, my husband. At least when it came to impressing other women. That afternoon I made my first call to a private investigator. Vincent Kane had the weathered face of a man who'd seen too much of humanity's darker side. But his references were impeccable and his discretion absolute. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, far from anywhere I might be recognized. "I need to know everything," I told him, sliding a photo of Luca across the small table. "Where he goes, who he sees, how long this has been going on, and most importantly, what kind of evidence we can gather." Vincent studied the photo with professional detachment. "How long have you suspected?" 6 weeks. "But I think it's been going on much longer than that." "It usually has been," he said with the weary tone of a man who'd delivered this news too many times. "Most spouses don't notice until the affair has been established for months, sometimes years." The word affair hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "What do you need from me?" "Access to financial records, his schedule when possible, any changes in routine you've noticed." "And Mrs. Montgomery?" Vincent leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You need to decide what outcome you want. Evidence for a divorce settlement is one thing. Evidence for complete destruction is another. At that moment I thought I wanted the former. I was wrong. Vincent worked fast. Within 2 weeks he'd compiled a dossier that painted a picture of betrayal more extensive than I'd imagined. Luca and Sophia had been conducting their affair for 8 months. They had regular rendezvous at the Grandview Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. He'd purchased her expensive jewelry, paid for a weekend getaway to Napa Valley, and even helped her secure a promotion at the firm. But the most devastating revelation came on page 12 of Vincent's report. Luca had been embezzling from the firm's client trust accounts to fund his affair. Small amounts at first, carefully hidden through complex financial maneuvers that showcased his legal expertise. But as his relationship with Sophia intensified, so did his thefts. Over the past 8 months he'd stolen nearly $200,000. He's good, Vincent admitted when he delivered the report. If he'd stopped at 50,000 he might never have been caught. But love makes people sloppy. Love. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. What happens if this comes to light? I asked. Disbarment certainly. Criminal charges probably. Prison time definitely. Vincent paused, studying my reaction. This isn't just adultery anymore, Mrs. Montgomery. This is felony embezzlement. Your husband's entire life is built on stolen money. As I sat in my car outside Vincent's office, staring at the damning evidence in my hands, something fundamental shifted inside me. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but they were overshadowed by something darker, more powerful. Rage. Not the hot, explosive kind that leads to screaming matches and thrown dishes. This was cold, calculated fury that settled into my bones like ice. Luca hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd built his new life on lies and theft, funding his passion with stolen money while I played the perfect wife. That's when I realized Vincent had been wrong about one thing. I didn't want evidence for a divorce settlement. I wanted complete and utter destruction. The transformation began that night. I stood in our master bathroom, studying my reflection in the vanity mirror that Luca had installed with such pride. The woman staring back at me looked the same. Same green eyes, same carefully maintained auburn hair, same flawless skin maintained through expensive treatments and religious skincare routines. But behind those familiar features lurked someone new. Someone dangerous. I started making lists. Not grocery lists or social calendar reminders, but strategic assessments of my husband's vulnerabilities. His pride, his reputation, his relationships, his weaknesses. I cataloged them all with the methodical precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. Luca's greatest fear wasn't losing me. I'd realized that with painful clarity. It was losing face. His entire identity was built on being the successful lawyer, the respected partner, the man other men envied and women desired. Take that away and there would be nothing left but an empty shell. My phone rang, interrupting my planning. Catherine's name appeared on the screen and I answered with my practiced cheerfulness. Eileen, darling. Luca's mother purred, her voice carrying that subtle condescension she'd perfected over 12 years of barely tolerating me. I'm calling about Christmas dinner. Will you be preparing your usual feast? Every year I spent days preparing an elaborate Christmas dinner for Luca's family. Turkey with all the trimmings, homemade pies, expensive wines, and decorations worthy of a magazine spread. It was one of the few times Catherine actually complimented my efforts, though she always managed to find something to criticize. Of course, I replied, my mind already working. I wouldn't dream of disappointing the family. Excellent. And Luca mentioned that Maverick might be joining us this year? Such a lovely young man. I do hope you'll make him feel welcome. Maverick. Luca's best friend since law school and according to Vincent's report, the one person who knew about the affair. The one who'd been covering for Luca, providing alibis and moral support for his betrayal. Absolutely, I said, my smile audible even through the phone. I'll make sure it's a Christmas dinner none of us will ever forget. With Christmas still 2 months away, I had time to prepare. But first I needed to gather more evidence and ensure my own protection. The next morning I opened a private bank account at a different institution, one where Luca had no connections. I began quietly transferring small amounts from our joint savings, nothing large enough to trigger alerts, but enough to give me financial independence. I also made an appointment with Eleanor Hartwell, the city's most ruthless divorce attorney. Eleanor had a reputation for destroying unfaithful husbands so thoroughly that most settled out of court rather than face her in battle. Her office was everything I'd expected: glass and steel, minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's cars, and walls lined with law degrees and awards. Eleanor herself was intimidating. Mid-50s, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my wedding dress. "Mrs. Montgomery," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "I understand you have a situation." I handed her copies of Vincent's report, watching her expression remain neutral as she absorbed the devastating evidence of Luca's betrayals. "This is comprehensive," she finally said. "Your investigator is very thorough. With evidence like this, we could certainly secure you a favorable settlement." "I don't want a settlement," I said quietly. "I want him destroyed." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Destroyed is a strong word, Mrs. Montgomery. Are you certain that's the path you want to take?" "He stole from his clients to fund his affair," I replied, my voice steady despite the fury churning in my chest. "He betrayed not just me but everyone who trusted him. Yes, I want him destroyed." "Very well." Eleanor leaned back in her chair. "But understand that once we go down this path, there's no turning back. Your husband will lose everything: his career, his reputation, his freedom. Are you prepared for the collateral damage that will inevitably follow?" I thought of all the nights I'd waited for him to come home, all the lies he'd fed me with such casual cruelty, all the times I'd felt like I was going crazy for suspecting what I now knew to be true. "I'm prepared," I said. "Then let's discuss strategy." October and November passed in a strange sort of suspended animation. To the outside world, I remained the perfect wife. I attended firm parties with Luca, smiled brilliantly while he accepted accolades for cases won with stolen money. I planned our Christmas dinner with obsessive attention to detail, consulting with caterers and florists as if it were the social event of the year. Luca seemed almost relieved by my behavior. If he'd noticed any change in me, he attributed it to my newfound dedication to making our life perfect. He became more affectionate, more attentive, as if my increased efforts had rekindled his interest. How wrong he was. Every kiss he gave me tasted of betrayal. Every compliment felt like mockery. But I played my part flawlessly, even as I methodically documented his every movement, his every lie, his every theft. The most difficult part was watching him with Sophia at firm events. She would arrive looking stunning, accepting congratulations on her recent promotion. The promotion my husband had secured for her with embezzled money. They would maintain careful distance in public, but I could read the subtle signals between them. A brush of fingers when passing documents. Meaningful glances across crowded rooms. The way her face lit up when he entered a conversation. It was at the firm's annual Thanksgiving mixer that I overheard the conversation that sealed their fate. I'd stepped away from a tedious discussion about charity fundraising to refresh my wine when I heard familiar voices from the adjacent alcove. Luca and Maverick, hidden from view by an elaborate flower arrangement. "She suspects nothing?" Maverick asked, his voice low. "Nothing," Luca replied confidently. "Eileen's been the perfect wife lately. Almost like the old days. I think she's finally accepting that this is just who I am, focused on my career, working long hours." She stopped asking questions. "And Sophia?" "Getting impatient. She wants me to file for divorce, but I'm not ready yet. Eileen's too useful. Her connections, her social skills, the way she manages my life. I'll end it eventually, but on my timeline." I gripped my wine glass so tightly I was surprised it didn't shatter. "What about Christmas?" Maverick asked. "Sophia's expecting you to spend it with her family." "I'll figure something out," Luca said dismissively. "Maybe it's time to start preparing Eileen for the inevitable. Christmas dinner might be the perfect opportunity to serve her with papers. Public humiliation might actually work in my favor. She'll be too shocked to fight back effectively." Maverick laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Brutal but effective. She'll fall apart, then beg you to stay. She won't be able to live without you. Women are so unpredictable when their perfect little worlds collapse." "Exactly. And once she's signed, I'll have Sophia there for New Year's. A fresh start with a woman who actually understands my ambitions." I slipped away before they noticed me, my heart pounding not with hurt, but with savage satisfaction. They just handed me the final piece of my puzzle. Christmas dinner was going to be perfect indeed. December flew by in a blur of careful orchestration. I threw myself into Christmas preparations with an enthusiasm that delighted Luca and his family. The house was transformed into a winter wonderland. Garlands on every banister, a 12-foot Christmas tree in the living room, and enough lights to be seen from space. I ordered the finest turkey from the city's most exclusive butcher, imported wine from Luca's favorite vineyard, and commissioned custom place cards from a high-end stationer. Every detail was perfect, every element designed to create the ideal stage for the performance of my life. Meanwhile, Eleanor had been busy. The paperwork was filed and ready, investigators were standing by, and key players had been discreetly contacted. The State Bar Association had been alerted to potential misconduct requiring investigation. The FBI's white-collar crime division had received an anonymous tip about possible embezzlement at a prestigious law firm. All the dominoes were lined up, waiting for Christmas Day to set them tumbling. But my masterpiece, my Christmas gift to Luca, required special preparation. I spent hours at Kinko's printing and binding documents. Bank statements showing the embezzled funds. Photos of Luca and Sofia in compromising positions. Hotel receipts and jewelry purchase confirmations. Phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between them. Every piece of evidence Vincent had gathered, organized chronologically to tell the complete story of my husband's betrayal. But the cover page was my personal touch. A photo I'd taken of Luca and Sofia at the Thanksgiving mixer, gazing at each other with such obvious desire that anyone could see they were lovers. Across the bottom I'd printed a simple message: "Merry Christmas, darling. I hope you enjoy your gift as much as I've enjoyed preparing it." I had the entire package professionally bound in elegant black leather with gold embossing, like a commemorative book. It looked expensive, important, the kind of gift that suggested careful thought and deep meaning. Which it was just not in the way they'd expect. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of picture-perfect winter day that belonged on greeting cards. I woke early as I had every Christmas for 12 years, and began the elaborate dance of preparing our feast. Luca was unusually affectionate, bringing me coffee in bed and commenting on how beautiful I looked even in my pajamas. If I didn't know better, I might have thought he was feeling guilty about what he planned to do later. "You've outdone yourself this year, sweetheart," he said, surveying the dining room I'd spent hours perfecting. Crystal stemware caught the morning light, fine china gleamed against the burgundy tablecloth, and centerpieces of winter roses filled the air with subtle fragrance. "Only the best for your family," I replied, adjusting a napkin that was already perfectly placed. "Our family," he corrected, pulling me into his arms. "You know how much you mean to all of us, don't you?" The irony was so bitter I could taste it. "Of course I do." Luca's family began arriving around noon. Catherine swept in wearing her usual disapproval like expensive perfume, immediately finding fault with the temperature of the house. Isaac followed with his wife and teenage son Tyler, all of them carrying wrapped presents and false smiles. Maverick was the last to arrive, and I watched him exchange a meaningful look with Luca. Today was the day. They were really going through with their plan. Perfect. As I put the finishing touches on dinner, I could hear them in the living room, their voices carrying that artificial cheerfulness that marked families who only tolerated each other out of obligation. Catherine was criticizing the Christmas decorations, a bit ostentatious, don't you think? While Isaac made awkward small talk with Maverick. Tyler, bless him, was the only honest one in the bunch, openly bored and counting the minutes until he could escape back to his video games. At exactly 2 o'clock I announced that dinner was ready. The dining room fell silent as everyone admired the spread I'd prepared. The turkey was golden and perfectly carved, surrounded by all the traditional sides. Mashed potatoes with real cream, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce both jellied and fresh, stuffing that had been in Luca's family for 3 generations. "Eileen, this looks absolutely magnificent," Catherine said, and for once she seemed genuinely impressed. "You've truly outdone yourself." "Thank you," I replied, taking my seat at the foot of the table while Luca presided from the head. I wanted this Christmas to be extra special. As we filled our plates and began eating, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe everyone sensed this would be our last Christmas together, but the usual family tensions seemed muted. Isaac actually complimented my cooking. Tyler put down his phone without being asked. Even Catherine seemed almost pleasant. I played the perfect hostess, keeping wine glasses filled and conversation flowing, all while watching Luca grow increasingly nervous. His hand kept drifting to his jacket pocket where I knew the divorce papers waited. Maverick kept shooting him encouraging looks as if urging him to get on with it. Halfway through the main course, I excused myself to check on dessert. In the kitchen, I took deep, steadying breaths and touched the elegant black box I'd hidden behind the mixing bowls. Very soon now. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had shifted. Luca was sitting straighter, his jaw set with determination. Maverick was leaning forward slightly like a spectator at a gladiator match. Catherine was watching with sharp eyes, clearly sensing that something was about to happen. "Eileen," Luca said, his voice carrying that lawyer's cadence he used in court. "Before we have dessert, I have something for you." "How thoughtful," I murmured, settling back into my chair. The manila envelope looked so ordinary against the elegant table setting, but I could feel the weight of everyone's attention as Luca slid it across the polished mahogany. "Go ahead," he urged, that familiar cruel smile beginning to play at the corners of his mouth. "Open it." I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as I broke the seal and withdrew the divorce papers. The room was dead silent except for the soft crackling of the fire and Tyler's shocked intake of breath when he realized what he was witnessing. I read through the first page slowly, methodically, as if I were reviewing a contract for a charity event. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable. Finally, I looked up at my husband of 12 years. "You want me to sign these?" "It's for the best, Eileen," he said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "We've grown apart. We want different things. This way we can both move on with dignity." Dignity. The word was so absurd I almost laughed. I reached for the pen he'd thoughtfully provided, and I could see Maverick practically vibrating with anticipation. This was the moment they'd planned so carefully. The moment I would fall apart, beg for another chance, make a scene that would justify everything Luca had done. Instead, I signed my name with a flourish across each page that required it, my handwriting bold and confident. "There," I said, sliding the papers back to him. "Done." The confusion that rippled around the table was almost comical. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to cry, to plead, to make their victory complete. "Well," I continued, rising from my chair with perfect composure, "since we're exchanging gifts, I have something for you too, darling." I retrieved the black leather box from the kitchen and placed it before Luca with ceremony. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. I do hope you like it." His hands shook slightly as he untied the gold ribbon. The box was heavy, substantial, the kind of packaging reserved for truly meaningful gifts. When he lifted the lid and saw the bound collection of evidence documenting his crimes and betrayals, the color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. Catherine leaned forward to look, then gasped and pressed her hand to her throat. Maverick scrambled to his feet so quickly his chair toppled backward. Even Tyler went pale, though he couldn't possibly understand what he was looking at. But Isaac began to laugh. A harsh, bitter sound that cut through the stunned silence like a blade. "Oh, this is rich," he said, looking at his brother with something between admiration and disgust. "This is absolutely perfect." "What is it?" Catherine demanded, reaching for the book with trembling fingers. I smiled serenely as she opened it and began reading. Her face went through a fascinating array of expressions: confusion, comprehension, horror, and finally, disgust. 8 months. I said conversationally as if discussing the weather. "That's how long your son has been conducting an affair with his colleague Sofia Rivera. 8 months of lies, deception, and stolen money to fund their relationship." "Stolen money?" Isaac echoed, still grinning with malicious delight. "Oh yes," I continued, my voice never losing its pleasant hostess tone. "Luca has been embezzling from his firm's client trust accounts. Nearly $200,000. All carefully documented with bank records, transaction histories, and accounting irregularities." Luca tried to speak, but only a strangled sound emerged. "The photos are particularly damning," I added helpfully. "Page 15 shows them at the Grandview Hotel. Page 23 captures a lovely moment at Café Luna where he's giving her jewelry purchased with stolen money. And page 31. Well, that's from the Thanksgiving mixer where they thought no one was watching." Catherine was flipping through the pages with growing horror, her carefully applied makeup beginning to smear as tears of rage and humiliation tracked down her cheeks. "You've destroyed him," she whispered. "No," I replied calmly. "He destroyed himself. I just documented it. Maverick finally found his voice. You can't prove any of this. It's all circumstantial. Actually, it's all admissible, I interrupted. I had excellent legal advice on that point. Bank records, hotel receipts, photographic evidence, phone records. Hotel receipts, photographic evidence, phone records, witness statements. Everything obtained legally and properly authenticated. The room erupted into chaos. Catherine was sobbing into her napkin. Maverick was backing toward the door like a cornered animal. Tyler was staring at his uncle with newfound understanding of what embezzlement meant. Isaac was laughing so hard he was crying. But Luca just sat there staring at the evidence of his downfall, his face a mask of shock and growing terror. Of course, I continued pleasantly, this is just your copy. The FBI received their set this morning. The State Bar Association got theirs yesterday. And Sophia, well, she'll be getting hers tomorrow morning along with her termination papers. The FBI? Luca's voice came out as a croak. White-collar crime division, I confirmed. They're very interested in your creative accounting methods. Apparently, embezzling client funds is a federal offense. Who you? The next few minutes were a masterclass in watching people's carefully constructed worlds collapse in real time. Catherine was alternating between rage and hysteria. How could you do this to our family? She shrieked at me. We trusted you. We welcomed you into our home. You tolerated me, I corrected. There's a difference. And as for trust, I learned about the value of that from your son. Maverick was frantically texting, probably trying to warn Sophia or figure out how to distance himself from the wreckage. His face had gone gray as he realized his role as accomplice and enabler was also documented in my gift. Isaac had stopped laughing and was now studying his brother with something approaching pity. Jesus, Luca. 200,000? What the hell were you thinking? But it was Tyler who asked the question that cut deepest. Uncle Luca, are you going to prison? The silence that followed was deafening. That depends, I said gently, on how cooperative he is with federal investigators. Luca finally seemed to shake off his shock. His lawyer's instincts kicked in, and I could see him mentally cataloging damage control strategies. This is vindictive, he said, his voice gaining strength. A spurned wife's revenge fantasy. No prosecutor will. Actually, I interrupted, I've already spoken with Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Walsh. She's very interested in your case. Apparently, law firm embezzlement is becoming quite an epidemic, and they want to make an example. The name hit him like a physical blow. Rebecca Walsh was known for her ruthless prosecution of white-collar criminals. She had a conviction rate that was legendary and a reputation for maximum sentences. You vindictive bitch, Maverick snarled, his composure finally cracking. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed multiple lives over a simple affair. I turned to look at him with calm interest. Are you referring to the same affair you helped facilitate? The one where you provided alibis and cover stories? Because page 47 has some lovely documentation of your involvement. Maverick went white. As an attorney himself, he knew exactly what accessory charges could mean for his own career. Mom, we should go, Isaac said quietly, helping Catherine to her feet. She was still clutching the damning evidence book like it might burst into flames. Yes, I agreed pleasantly. I think that would be best. Dessert is cancelled, I'm afraid. I have some phone calls to make. As they filed out in stunned silence, Luca remained seated, staring at the ruins of his Christmas dinner. The turkey was growing cold, the wine was going flat, and his entire life was imploding around him. Why? He asked finally. Why destroy everything we built together? I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the last time as his wife. We didn't build anything together, Luca. I built a life and you took it for granted while you built a fantasy with stolen money and another woman. The only thing I'm destroying is the lie. The week between Christmas and New Year's was a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and the systematic dismantling of Luca's life. The FBI executed a search warrant on our home the day after Christmas. I watched from my lawyer's office as agents carried out boxes of documents, computer hard drives, and financial records. Our neighbors gathered on their perfectly manicured lawns to witness the spectacle, their whispered conversations and pointing fingers marking the end of any social standing I might have had in our exclusive community. I found I didn't care. The media picked up the story within 48 hours. "Prominent attorney charged with embezzlement," screamed the headlines. The local news ran footage of Luca being led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. The image was everywhere: newspapers, websites, social media. Sofia Rivera was terminated from Blackwood and Associates and arrested the same day. The firm, desperate to distance itself from the scandal, issued a statement expressing their shock in cooperation with federal investigators. They froze all of Luca's accounts and began their own internal audit to determine the full extent of the damage. Maverick hired his own attorney and began negotiating a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against Luca. Their friendship, built over years of shared ambitions and moral compromises, disintegrated in a matter of days. I watched it all unfold from the safety of Eleanor's office, where we meticulously planned my divorce strategy. With Luca facing federal charges, our settlement negotiations took on an entirely different character. "He's desperate," Eleanor informed me during one of our strategy sessions. "His attorney is pushing for a quick settlement to minimize your potential testimony damage in the criminal case." "What are they offering?" "Everything," she said with satisfaction. "The house, the cars, the investment accounts that aren't frozen. He wants to give you everything in exchange for your silence." I considered this for a moment. "And if I refuse?" "Then you testify in his criminal trial about the lavish gifts he purchased for his mistress with stolen money, the trips they took, the lifestyle they maintained. Your testimony could add years to his sentence." The power was intoxicating. For 12 years, I had been the accommodating wife, bending my life around Luca's ambitions and desires. Now for the first time I held all the cards. "I want the house," I said finally. "And I want him to publicly admit to the affair in the divorce proceedings. Let the record show exactly why our marriage ended." Eleanor smiled. "Done." 3 months later, I sat in the federal courthouse watching my former husband face justice. The woman in the defendant's chair bore little resemblance to the confident attorney who had served me divorce papers on Christmas Day. Luca had lost weight, his suits hung loosely on his frame, and there was a haunted quality to his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and shattered dreams. Sofia sat at the prosecutor's table, having accepted a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. She looked older, more fragile. The vibrant confidence that had once attracted my husband replaced by the hollow expression of someone whose future had been reduced to rubble. The evidence I had gathered formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. My photographs were projected on large screens for the jury to see. Hotel receipts were entered as exhibits. Bank records traced the flow of stolen money with mathematical precision. When I took the stand to testify, I felt strangely calm. The courtroom was packed with reporters, former colleagues, and curious onlookers drawn by the scandalous details of the case. I could see Catherine in the gallery, her face a mask of barely controlled rage and humiliation. "Mrs. Montgomery," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court about your marriage to the defendant?" "We were married for 12 years, I replied, my voice steady and clear. "I believed I was married to an honest, hard-working attorney. I discovered I was actually married to a thief and a liar." Over the next 2 hours, I methodically destroyed any remaining vestiges of Luca's reputation. I testified about the lies, the financial irregularities I had noticed, the gradual changes in his behavior as his double life became more complex. When Luca's attorney cross-examined me, he tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife seeking revenge. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Montgomery, that you orchestrated this entire investigation out of spite over your husband's affair?" I looked directly at Luca as I answered. "I orchestrated this investigation because I discovered my husband was a criminal. The affair was just one of many crimes he committed against people who trusted him." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned with guilty verdicts on all counts, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete satisfaction. Luca was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. His law license was revoked. His assets were seized to pay restitution to the clients he had robbed. Sofia received 18 months in community service. Maverick lost his law license but avoided prison time in exchange for his cooperation. As the bailiff led Luca away, he turned to look at me one last time. In his eyes, I saw the complete comprehension of what his betrayal had cost him. Not just his freedom but his identity, his future, everything he had valued about himself. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the kitchen of what was now solely my house, preparing breakfast for one. The morning sun streamed through windows I had had professionally cleaned, casting everything in sharp, clear light. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if Luca's presence had been a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I had redecorated extensively, erasing any trace of our shared life and creating something that was entirely mine. My phone rang, interrupting my peaceful routine. Vincent Kane's name appeared on the screen. "Mrs. Montgomery," his familiar voice greeted me. "I hope you're well." "Very well, thank you. What can I do for you, Vincent?" "I wanted to let you know that I received a call from a potential client yesterday. A woman who suspects her husband of infidelity and financial impropriety. She specifically asked for the investigator who handled the Luca Montgomery case." I smiled, understanding the implication. Word travels fast. "Indeed it does. Would you be willing to provide a reference? Sometimes hearing from someone who's been through the process helps people find the courage to seek the truth." I considered this. In the months since Luca's conviction, I had received numerous calls from women in similar situations. Some wanted advice, others simply wanted to talk to someone who had successfully fought back against a cheating spouse. "Give her my number," I said. "I'd be happy to speak with her." "Thank you. And Mrs. Montgomery? I hope you know that what you accomplished was remarkable. Many people in your situation choose to look the other way or settle for less than they deserve." After hanging up, I walked through my house now, thinking about Vincent's words. For 12 years I had chosen to look the other way, to make excuses, to accept less than I deserved. The woman who had signed those divorce papers on Christmas Day had been weak, naive, trusting to a fault. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood that justice sometimes required taking matters into your own hands. Someone who knew that the most devastating revenge was simply revealing the truth and letting consequences follow their natural course. 1 year after Luca's sentencing, I received an unexpected visitor. I was tending to my garden. A new hobby I had discovered brought me peace, when Catherine Montgomery appeared at my front gate. She looked older, diminished somehow, as if the scandal had aged her beyond her years. Her usually perfect appearance showed signs of strain, gray roots showing through her dyed hair, lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Eileen," she said quietly, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "May I come in?" Curiosity more than kindness made me nod and lead her to the patio where I had been enjoying my morning coffee. "You look well," she observed, settling into one of the wrought iron chairs I had purchased to replace the furniture Luca had chosen. "I am well," I replied simply. We sat in silence for several minutes, two women who had shared family holidays and social obligations but had never really known each other. "I came to apologize," Catherine said finally. The words surprised me. In 12 years of marriage I had never heard Catherine Montgomery apologize for anything. For what, specifically? For not seeing what kind of man my son had become. For not treating you with the respect you deserved. For... She paused, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easily. "For raising a man who could betray someone as thoroughly as he betrayed you." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. Instead, I saw something I had never expected from Catherine: genuine remorse. "He writes to me from prison," she continued. "Asks about you constantly. Wants to know if you're happy, if you've moved on, if you ever mention him." "What do you tell him?" "The truth. That you seem happier than I ever saw you during your marriage. That you've created a life that's entirely your own. That you rarely speak his name." She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. "He asked me to give you this." I stared at the letter but made no move to take it. "What does it say?" "I don't know. I told him I wouldn't read his private correspondence." "But Eileen..." Catherine's voice broke slightly. "He's not the same man who served you those papers. Prison has changed him. Humbled him. I think he finally understands what he lost." "It's too late for understanding," I said quietly. "I know. But perhaps it's not too late for forgiveness." I finally took the letter, noting Luca's familiar handwriting on the envelope. My name was written in the careful script he had once used to sign important legal documents. "He'll be eligible for parole in 3 years," Catherine said. "He's been asking if there's any chance." No, I interrupted, my voice firm but not unkind. There's no chance of reconciliation, Catherine. That man destroyed something that can never be rebuilt. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. I know. I suppose I had to ask. After Catherine left, I sat alone with Luca's letter for a long time before finally opening it. Eileen, I know I have no right to write to you, no right to expect you to read this, no right to ask for anything. But I need you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. Every day in here I think about Christmas dinner. Not about the divorce papers or the evidence you presented, but about the moment I realized I had lost the one person who truly loved me. You didn't just document my crimes, Eileen. You showed me exactly who I had become. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just need you to know that whatever happiness you found, you deserve it. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover the magnitude of my betrayal, but it's all I have left to offer. Luca. I read the letter twice, then walked to the fireplace and fed it to the flames. Watching the paper curl and blacken, I felt the final chapter of our story come to a close. 2 years later, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner for new friends I had made through my volunteer work with a domestic violence support organization. Women who, like me, had discovered that sometimes the people we trust most are capable of the deepest betrayals. My phone buzzed with a text message from Eleanor. Luca Montgomery was denied parole. Will serve full sentence. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled and deleted the message. Justice, it seemed, was still being served. The woman who had signed those divorce papers on Christmas Day 3 years ago would have felt satisfaction at this news. But the woman I had become felt something different. Indifference. Luca Montgomery and his consequences had become irrelevant to my life. I had built something new from the ashes of my destroyed marriage. A life based on truth rather than lies, strength rather than submission, self-respect rather than desperate accommodation. I had learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was living well. The doorbell rang and I went to greet my guests with genuine warmth. Behind me, the kitchen table was set for 6, surrounded by chairs that held people who valued honesty, who had earned their places in my life through character rather than obligation. As I opened the door to welcome my friends, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the perfect corporate wife who had once lived in this house. This woman's smile was real, her eyes were clear, and her spine was straight with hard-won confidence. She was everything the old Eileen had never been allowed to become. She was free. And in a world where justice often goes unserved and betrayal often goes unpunished, sometimes freedom is the sweetest revenge of all.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.